Good evening. Welcome to part 2 of budget meetings. It looks like first up tonight is planning and building. So I'm going to turn it over to Manager Dottori. Did I catch you off guard? Were you blowing on a hot cup of tea or something there, Manager?
Okay, just some soup. It's really not hot out, but you know, it's nice to have soup. Good evening tonight. Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here for our second installment of the Village of Ossining budget. Everything you need to know. First up tonight, we have building and planning. So we have Jaime Martinez, our Director of Planning, and Joe Gasnelli, our building inspector, our Chief Building Inspector. I'm not sure, I think we were talking about how we were going to do this going first, so maybe Dale, I think we were going to do Jaime first since he has a meeting tonight.
I'm going to reach out to Dale. It doesn't look like she's on. Give me one moment.
Yeah, she's calling me. Hello? Okay, Jamie's going to come help you. Okay. Okay, bye-bye. Dale's link is broken, so she will be with us in a minute. So anyway, while we're at it, trying to, anything else you'd like to talk about while we're waiting?
You said Jaime's going to be up first. Jaime, do you want to give us just maybe a little overview on, what you've been with us for what are we up to? 7 months now? You joined the week that the world shut down. So we've gotten to see a lot of you on screen and very little of you in the real world. So it's always good but I feel like I've gotten to know you really well in all of our virtual meetings because you're with us like 3 out of 4 Wednesdays a month. So do you want to tell us what we have to look forward to in your 2021 budget?
Yeah, so it's so largely it is a status quo budget. There are not a lot of changes. There were some large charges last year related to studies that have either been started or have kind of been moved into different budget lines. And so therefore we have not really looked to increase anything. We are seeing a slight decrease in one line in relation to a copier. That copier, we had 2 copiers here in the building and planning department. And so one of them was out of lease. We were still continuing with the lease, but it was sort of out of the contract period. And so rather than keep 2, large multifunction copiers, building and planning, we decided to just consolidate and use the one. It seemed particularly appropriate considering we all figured out how to work without printing everything for so long that I didn't really see much need for us to go back to, printing a bunch of stuff. And I certainly have grown pretty accustomed to not printing anything anymore. So we really don't contribute that much to the printing cost. So we figured it might make sense to allow, building could sort of take off the cost a little bit there from the printer, and we could save some money as well in our budgets to help bring down the costs. So other than that, there's really not a whole lot. There was some money in there last year for Keller Sessions.
Yeah.
And so this year there's continuing to be money in there for Keller Sessions. I've kind of taken the position that, having a consultant available is a lot better than maybe, building up sort of more staff. If a consultant is not needed or is not working out, you can sort of get out of a contract pretty easily. If you hire staff and there's just not enough work for them, then it's not quite as simple to sort of move away from that. So having Keller Sessions around is really helpful to that process. And so those are really kind of the major changes.
Right. And with regard to Keller Sessions, we're going to see a fee reduction from them for the last 3 months of the year. We're just in the process of finalizing that, so it's not reflected in the budget yet. Oh, there's Dale. And we will be, that reduced fee will go through March, and then at that point we'll be doing, before that we're going to be starting the RFP for engineering services. So.
Can I ask a question? Ballpark, how many hours a month do we have colored sessions for? By the way, I agree with everything being said. I'm just trying to get like a ballpark figure all in. And I guess Dale would have that at some point, but any sense of how many hours a month?
Well, they're on a contract that is a set number, not necessarily set hours. And so I think the new contract brings it down to about $4,500 per month. I don't know in terms of
55.
hours, if I could give you that
Yeah,
number.
we'd
without
have-
paying.
Yeah, I think we'd have to look at the hours. I have, let me see if I can pull it up while Dale gets ready.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
curious as to how many hours, we're talking about here. I agree with what's being said. Having staff also, most staff people work at best 250 days a year. Consultants don't. They work on an as needed. You've got to take out vacations and pensions and all that. So I'm loving what you're doing. I'm just trying to get a sense for the number of hours per month to,
Yeah, well,
We're just going over some details with them so I can get that to the board subsequent to this meeting.
I could presume they sit in on zoning board and planning board, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They actually sit on the planning board. They don't sit on the zoning board. As part of that contract, they do work on things like the wetlands ordinance. They do, walkthroughs for engineering. They do, assistance to DPW. So there's a bunch of different things, and some months are more than others. So
Right.
we have
Well,
to get back to you to get a full sense.
no, I understand, but I remember when I was on the zoning board.
I think we lost you, Bob.
You muted.
Hear
we
me
did.
now? Now you hear me?
Now we hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, when I sat on the zoning board, I know they weren't on every session of the zoning board, but they were there, I guess, on occasion. That's all. I was just curious.
So that would be helpful for us to have a little bit more of a sense of
Yeah.
logically what you're saying. Everything makes sense, and it sounds like you can get help us have a clear picture of their time. I mean, I've had they've been very beneficial for a lot of things over the years, and most recently with helping us review things like wetlands has been really helpful from their experience with other communities that have wetlands legislation. And so, but I do see Dale is here, and she's got the planning budget up. That's planning budget I'm looking at, right? Dale, could you bring that up to 150% again for old eyes? Thank
Yep,
you.
here we go.
Awesome. Thank you.
I apologize. I had a slight technical difficulty over here, but Jamie ran over and helped me out.
Yay. Thank you, Jamie. I find it hard to believe you're a whiz at everything, Dale. So I'm glad you're with us. Okay.
The link disappeared. I don't know.
No.
So yeah, welcome. Here we are to another fabulous budget review session with Jaime is going to be up first, and then we'll do building after with Joe, and then DPW water and sewers for tonight. So I know you all started to talk already in regards to planning, so we'll just go through it line by line. Jaime is another employee that his salary gets spread out across a couple different accounts. So this first line, you will see 20% of Jaime's over here. And in this budget line, we used to charge or have a budgeted line for printing and postage, but we never really used it. So just for ease of going forward, we're just going to split any charges across zoning, which is 8015, and planning, which is 8020, which we will see as we get further down into the next section. I think you talked about the copier lease and that they're now going to share with the building department, which is good because it lowers our fixed costs. We have a small amount in there for dues and meetings. Last year we did have monies in for the consulting lines for an economic development planning study, and then a community benefit strategy that we are not including for 2021. and then a small amount in for training and computer software. So we go to the next department. So this is the zoning lines for Jaime. So there's another piece of Jaime is in 8015 along with Jamie Kane, and a small piece of Stewart is in here as well. So we have our personnel costs, our contractual costs over here, which I think a piece of Kellard got charged to. Along with, this is where we had the parking study budgeted. We are moving that out. We created a capital project for that. So this will be reduced down. We have amounts in for legal notices. Telephone gets split across the different departments for planning and zoning. A small amount for printing and postage, which seems way down, so that's good. Another, yep.
A general overall, so far, all the plans we've looked at, printing and postage is like diminished dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming. Okay, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, I've seen, I mean, even in our department, we're doing a lot more electronically, you know, through email. So I'm wondering, Jaime, is that for your department as well?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we do almost everything over email. It's much easier. It's, you know.
Yeah. Also, I think COVID has
we did have the change in the way we were noticing people by mail too. So is that contributing? Because we were, I think originally, the village was paying for costs that now are assumed by the property owners.
You know, I think that took place a while ago. I mean, last year we were at 400. The year before we were at 284. I'm not sure how long it has been in place that we handed that off. But
2018.
So my point.
I knew Manny would know.
So that's what's reflected then.
Yeah, I think
So
2018 looks like it was 1,500, and then the next year it went down to almost 300. So
Right.
Okay.
It seems
Dale,
we, yep, can do an analysis of the printing and postage lines.
I think that it's pretty fair to say that COVID probably pushed it also a bit, where people don't want to print out all that. But I think you need to reduce dramatically, like across. I know you reduced it, but it needs to be reduced even more.
Yep.
Because it actually should be a guiding principle for working, not just a reflection of what happens, but it actually should be part of our going forward is less is more. Everything can be done digitally. There's no reason to print things out for people.
Well, that I would caution that if I know there has been some discussion back and forth about whether or not we're going to move forward with any rezonings, but if there are any rezonings that are pushed forward that are propagated by the village rather than like a private developer, then you do have to notice those individuals and the people surrounding that area, and that money would have to come out of somewhere. So the planning department.
Right. So that actually, because we haven't
this
done
year, I
that,
would say maybe
that's a
you
good
wanna keep
point.
it.
That's a good point. But actually, across, I mean, these are not big numbers, but it seems every single department has the same story. So I would just reduce it across. But Jaime makes a good point for this particular scenario. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say, my personal inclination is I hate getting junk in the mail and I don't really look at it. But when we have conversations with, for example, not related to planning necessarily, but with the working committee, there is a concern that with the digital divide, it is important to reach out to people in as many ways as possible. We are doing a lot of things in the planning department, particularly with the comp plan, where we may want to be able to do outreach to people even by mail, as archaic as that seems. That really is another layer of outreach for people. So I wouldn't want to reduce it any more than it is. And also, we're talking about pennies in the scope of the whole budget anyway. I don't think we should philosophically eliminate it, mostly because, you know, we're also very committed to being inclusive and reaching out to people in the way that they're going to be able to get the information.
Well, just out of curiosity, in terms of outreach, does Osnane have a history of using robocalls? Because
Ossining has a history of talking about using robocalls.
okay, yeah, I know a lot of municipalities have used them for.
I think it would be great. We tried to do it back in 2014, 15. It came up particularly when we had a water issue and we needed to contact people because there was a boil water notice in some, but not all of the village. And sometimes the county will help you, but sort of at their own convenience, they'll help you. And so we tried to work with the police department to have it be part of what we use as Nixle, but there's, a variety of, or businesses like that are that sort of outreach, but we went down that path. We did not have somebody in a position who was leading it who really valued the idea of robocalls for any reason other than potentially an emergency situation. The school district uses them all the time. And I think they would actually be really helpful and valuable in our community. So if anybody wanted to pick that up as another way of communicating, I think it might really be valuable, but we have not gone down that path in a while. And we've only ever done it in conjunction with the police. So it's always been tied into the emergency rather than informational. I wish we had. I wish we'd had it for the last 6 years that I've been mayor, frankly. And I think it was a missed opportunity and you should consider it.
Is there any way of doing some form of Nixle or something, some other platform?
I would. The first person I'd reach out to is I think it was Lieutenant Slater who did the research the last time when 6 years ago when we talked about having this ability to be not just emergency outreach but informational like this. So he could tell you what were the last what are the companies that are out there that they looked at, and I one of the other things we considered was could we work with the school district to be part of their robocall system and just be like one like for example the school district has different call lists for families at Claremont School and the high school. Like I don't get calls for the high school because I don't have any kids in the high school, so they can pick and choose who's going to receive a call. Theoretically, we could have an IMA with the school district and set up just a village call list, and it could be just village residents that we reach out to. Those are all things we talked about 6 years ago, and it stagnated. Maybe if we'd had stronger leadership in the management department or a planner that recognized the value of it, then maybe it would have gone further.
Well, I think it's something that should be at least looked into, personally.
Great. The next line you can see we reduced for the shared copier from the building department with the planning department. So that went down a little bit. Professional dues and meetings. Jaime, I believe, don't you have some individuals signed up for some training?
We do, yes. We have the PACE Land Use Law Center training. There's like a free version of it, but there's a more intense involved one, and that is something that we have a few people signed up for, including myself.
So can I ask a question in regards to training and I guess consultants in here? So we do have the attorneys, the lawyers that are part of the planning and zoning board. Where's that line in here?
That's going to be on the next page. So that's 458.
Okay, got it.
So 25% of their bill gets charged to this account, and then 75% gets charged to the planning budget line.
Now, in regards to training, had they done any training, Jaime, that you're aware?
So Stuart is doing the Land Use Law Center training. He's the other lawyer is a consultant, and they are, of course, required to do CLE training as a part of their law license. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, I was talking about training to the land use boards itself.
Providing training, yes. So they have provided one training, and it was in regards to, I think, just standard stuff. They are supposed to provide some more, so we do need to kind of circle back with them. There has been one training, I recall.
One training to which, to whom?
Yeah, it was a while ago. I think it was the planning and zoning board combined.
So to both of them. Okay. All right. Okay.
Can you actually, I'm not feeling that that's 100% accurate. Could you please circle back to us in writing and just let us know exactly what training was done and who attended and what follow-up was done and how many hours were spent on that?
Yeah, if you want to keep going through the budget, I can look up the emails now.
No, you don't have to do that. Just
Oh, okay.
like in the next couple of days, just let us know. We had
Okay.
an agreement, and when we interviewed them, educating our very new boards was part of the conversation. And we had an
Yeah.
offsite where we had more conversation about that. And
Yeah.
just want to make sure it's in there somewhere. Maybe it's in a different budget line, which is perfectly fine too. It just, if we could just connect the dots here, that would be super helpful.
Okay.
And would you also see, if you don't mind, and I don't know if it's under you as Stuart, whether the other two land use boards, which are not under this legal entity, but we're supposed to get some training as well. I think they did. So there's two types of training, the kind that like Jamie Kane sends out and says, anybody want to go? And they go to a certain number of them and they raise their hand and we pay, there's some minimal fee. It's been mostly on Zoom this year, obviously. But then there is the stuff that we actually asked to get done specifically for our folks. I just don't know where we are with it. And I'm not saying that it hasn't been done. I'm just trying to, connect the dots here for us.
So, and I'm going to piggyback on that one, Rika. Thank you, because I was going to ask the same question. So there is a requirement for all these land use board members to fill up a training through the year.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you don't have to do it now, but I believe I would like to see one members have they completed their training hours through the year as well, because I think that is part of our bylaws. So I'll be curious to see how many of them have done it. And this goes throughout, not just zoning board and planning board. This goes throughout.
I know that, so I can say this much. I know Jamie at the end of the year sends out an email letting people know where they stand with their trainings. So they are doing trainings. I mean, there's one particular person, Bob DeRio. I think he's done like 1 million trainings. But they all are kept aware of here's where you are, the training, and we do have that list. So I'll have to speak with Jamie Kane to get that list.
Okay.
See you for the training.
Yep.
Yeah, we are at the end of the year, by the way. That's the point. Usually around budget times is when we need this. Thanks.
I do want to mention, though, I'm not sure if there are any requirements. I'm not sure what the requirements are, if any, for the HPC, and I'm not sure if there are any requirements at all for the EAC. So the only two boards that I know have requirements are the zoning and planning boards.
HPC is required, and EAC, I believe, is required because when I was in the HPC, we had training. So I know that that's a fact, and I believe there was some talks about the EAC as well when we actually we put term limits to all these boards, and that's part of the bylaws as well. So you may want to double check that with Stuart, but yeah, I know this is not part of the budget, but this is one of the times that we get to ask this kind of questions. So.
Yeah, it is actually part of the budget because we may need to budget more training because we have such still relatively new boards and we may bring other people on. So we want to just set this in play. So it actually is. That's the whole point.
Okay. So I think HPC does require training and we can check on EAC. Most of these trainings are really, really affordable because they're usually provided by organizations that we're members of, like the Westchester Municipal Planning Federation or even the Pace Land Use Law Center are always very reasonably priced. It could be a NICOM or a Pattern for Progress, both of which we're members of and are reasonably priced. So, even if there's not quite enough there, it's still not going to be a, astronomical amount. And if we go over budget because people are getting better trained to work for free and be really thoughtful public servants, then that's not the worst thing in the world. I'm not worried about being too far above or below that line. Dale, is there something you want to draw our attention to? I am sort of mindful of the time because we budgeted an hour and a half for both planning and building together. So we're about halfway through our planning time.
Yep. So now we're into the planning department proper. So we have another piece of Jaime and Jamie over here as well, along with Some other payroll expenses down here in contractual, we did budget an additional 15,000 to be used from that fund balance for grant writing services. So there's a total of 25,000 in this line. Publication of legal notices is a carryover. Telephone and internet, printing and postage. Would you still have the same requirements with this printing and postage line, Jaime?
Yeah, I think what generally happens is Jamie kind of spreads them out as the planning and postage goes out throughout the year. But again, I mean, I don't believe we've spent very much this year, if anything at all. So it's the same. The noticing, we don't do the noticing anymore.
Great.
Well, you're saying it's almost nothing this year. Is that the new normal?
It might be, yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. I mean, we're talking about, does it make sense to bring it from 1,500 down to 1,000 or something? So the $500 difference doesn't really matter, but it is, that same conversation that we were having, at the previous time we saw the printing and postage. And
Great. So this is what Karen and Jaime were speaking of before. Right now, we do have 90,000 in for Kellogg Sessions, which potentially can be reduced a bit as we're going through. Training school education here, you have a small amount with a small charge for the current year. Special legal services, so this is the other side of the special land use council charges, the 75%. Small amount for computer software.
Hey Dale, why was Kellogg Sessions 18% over expected budget, over the original budget? Did we add a bunch? Was it something specific like wetlands? Do
I
you have any
think
idea?
this was going on last year's contract being renewed, but they've already brought it down.
So what we had done, like if you remember, we were without a planner for several months, like from August 2019 through March 2020, we were without a planner. So we had renegotiated with Kellogg Sessions. So we did go over budget. That number is going to come down for 2020. And then that's really a holding place. We'll have, it'll be a lower cost for 2021. But they were at one point filling in a little bit more on some of the things that typically the planner would have been reviewing. And that was where the cost differential came. But we made it up on the salary side.
But you're still putting them really high for the upcoming year, even though it's being reduced.
Yeah, no, that's just something we caught that. We are bringing that down.
Oh, I'm sorry, you caught it.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's just something that, as we were doing the budget, we
Got it.
to bring it down through March, and then we're going to renegotiate. We're going to do the RFP anyway. So that's think of it more as a holding, but that number will come down during the course of this budget.
By the way, I wanted to mention we are lucky to have Jamie Kane in the listening audience, and she mentioned that we used to send packets of all of the documentation to the land use board members.
Yes,
we
all remember.
It's all digital now, so we no longer send packets.
That's saved a few trees.
A lot of trees, yeah.
Also, all those maps, they now just put it up on the wall, on the screen.
Well,
with the Google Maps. You guys used to send all that out too.
Yeah, I mean, it saves trees, or obviously it saves postage, but it also saves the applicants, because the applicants have to pay to get all those things printed, and that can be pretty costly. So it's good, I think, for the for the taxpayer.
No, that's been great. That's been really great. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie. So the next department is our Landlord Tenant Relations Council. So every year we do put an amount in here for LTC mediation training. This is that 3,000. And then landlord registration initiatives, there's an extra 20,000 in this line.
They'll refresh my memory on this one. For some reason, is drawing a blank. Why is those lines under planning department?
Well, they're in their own department, but I guess we, at the time, weren't sure who to tag them to, who's the best place to tag them to.
Okay. I was just curious because those,
Right.
there's no, Jaime doesn't sit in any of those. Obviously, is more steward than anybody else.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm curious to see,
We can change it if that's more appropriate. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think my suggestion would be to talk to Stuart, obviously, on that one and kind of figure out where those lines will be more suitable to be part of it.
Great. Perfect. So here, the next department is the Historic Review Commission. So we have a small amount in there for, I guess, Jamie does meetings, Jaime?
Yeah, she does legal notice for all the meetings.
Mhm.
Well, I'm sorry, for the historic preservation,
Yep.
she does not actually do meetings. So she not for HPC, not for EAC.
So what's the personal service overtime do you, for
I
HPC?
would have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure.
Okay. I mean, I know sometimes they've hired consultants to do specific,
Yeah. I mean, it
Historic
is
review
possible
or-
that Jamie attended meetings earlier this year before I was hired. So I think that it's possible that that's why.
All right. It's also,
But I don't know.
$200 we're talking
I will
about,
have to get back to you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
It's
Yeah.
good, you don't have big $100,000
I know, we're talking
You
about
got $119 questions. So that's
119.25.
good news, right?
And I can pull the payroll. That came from the August 7th payroll. So we can check and see if it was a miscoding as well. And if that's correct, we can do a reclass to where it should be housed.
Okay.
So then you have a small amount for contractual in here, publication of legal notices, printing and postage. And then again, training, school, and education, which there has not been anything expended to date.
Well, you know what's interesting on that? Oh, never mind. I got it now. That control total, that 1925, that's the same 1925 that we had before this. That's the total of everything from
Yeah.
above here. Okay.
So, I mean, I'm just assuming that a lot of stuff was done on Zoom and not, in person where they charge. I think a lot of the Zoom stuff, they just don't charge any significant, because it's like it looks like there's no training or education this year.
Right. Not from this line. That's correct.
I know a lot
So-
of the things that used to cost money this year have not, right?
Like what?
Well, there's been a few different trainings, WUMP trainings that usually cost like $10 to go to because they hand out bagels and stuff, and there's no bagels, so it's been free. So it is possible that they have attended and just it didn't cost anything. It's also possible that they didn't attend. So I do need to get that answer back to you on the training.
Yeah, I was just looking. That's sort of a weird big number. Okay.
Are we going to be discussing recommended fee schedule changes, or is that later on? Is that like another day, or is that happening? Are there any changes for planning that we still need to discuss?
There are some possible changes. So, but if it is up to you, if you'd like to speak about them today, then we can speak about them today. And if you,
I sometimes like we have the fee schedule just in general scheduled, I guess, for Thursday evening, and I don't know if you're going to be here for that. I just want to make sure that we get to everything tonight without getting behind. That's all.
well, I only have about 12 items that charge fees. So it's a pretty short schedule.
Okay. Well, you don't have to skip to that if you've got more to go through. If you've got more to go through here, I don't know if there's more to highlight.
Well, we're at Jaime's revenues, so that would be a good segue if you wanted to touch on fees quick, Jaime.
Sounds like that would be appropriate then.
Great.
Okay. Do you have the fee schedule, or do you want me to pull up the fee schedule?
We all have a 2021 proposed fee schedule in our little handy dandy book here.
Because there was an analysis that was done that sort of feeds into that.
Mm.
And
Do you want me to pull that up, Jaime?
if you have the analysis, that would be super helpful.
Hang on one second.
And it will explain. So I would like to say that this was me sort of taking a look at the fee schedule in concert. Jamie really did most of the work in identifying the background info. But this was us just kind of taking a look at what the fees are, whether there were any fees that were, maybe lower than they needed to be, any fees that were higher than they needed to be,
Do you want,
making some changes.
sorry, do you want the research one pulled up, Jaime?
Yes, please.
Okay, that's the
Yeah.
one?
Yes.
Can everybody see it?
So first I would like to, thank Jamie for kind of doing a lot of work and putting these numbers together. It was a lot to pull this all together. So the key was trying to figure out, I think that one of the things that's nice about Ossining is that it has pretty low fees, right? And that makes us competitive. But sometimes having the lowest fees doesn't mean you need to have the lowest fees by like 50%. Maybe you just need to have the lowest fees by like 5%, which is helpful. And so that sort of guided the process. The other thing that guided the process was thinking about the 1 and 2 family homeowners, that maybe those fees are a little higher than they need to be, finding a way to find some relief for those individuals while sort of bringing other fees up a little bit. So we looked at the fees for the town of Ossining, Briarcliff Manor, Village of Tarrytown, Portchester, Yorktown Heights, and the city of Peekskill. And so the different fees vary a lot in sort of the range of what they cost. For area variances, there's the variances that you have for 1 and 2 family homes versus 3 plus families and commercial properties. Our fee is $325, and the average fee is about $383. So I proposed that we bring our fee up an additional $25 for an area variance for 1 and 2 family homes, and $525, bring it up to $25 to $550. The average is $575. So in both cases, we still remain lower than the average. We have a use variance application here. Use variances are very difficult to get. They are almost always applications where somebody's trying to get more housing. They tend to be commercial sort of situations. So it's like going from a 2 family to a 3 family, 3 family to a 4 family, things of that nature. They're almost always commercial properties. Average 1 family homeowners just generally don't come in for use variance applications. And the average price kind of varies. You can see it's like $1,500 or $3,000 in Portchester, which is really high. $1,000 in the city of Peekskill, and then everybody else is kind of up and down, right? Town of Ossining is $350, Yorktown Heights is $210, Briarcliff is $500, Village we're $500. So I had recommended that we take ours up to $600, which is a little more than the average use variance for 1 and 2 family homes, which we almost never get, and is several $100s, almost $400 less than the average for commercial use variances. Which again, we don't get a lot of use variance applications. We have gotten more recently. All of them that I've seen this year have been, commercial property owners that are trying to sort of squeeze another unit in their property. And they take a massive amount of work, quite honestly, more than any other type of variance.
So can you help me? Because there's a few, Tarrytown, Portchester are 2 of the communities that give the 2 levels of use variance fees for the 1 and 2 family, and then for 3 family and all the commercial. Mm-hmm. I don't know enough examples of use variances to know when a 1 and 2 family would ever be applying for a use variance. But did you consider doing the split in Ossining where we could have a lower rate for a 1 and 2 family use variance if that really is going to be a lot less of a burden?
I did think about it. I'm open to it. If that is the direction that I'm given, then I would be fine with splitting that up. I think that, you know, if you have a single family home and you want to split it into a 2 family, which I'm sure does happen, but has not yet happened in the year that I've been here, or not the less than a year that I've been here, then you would have that $600 fee. Everything that I've seen so far is either taking a commercial property and converting it into residential, which has happened a couple of times, or having a 2 family and trying to convert it to a 3 family, or take a 2 family and add an additional commercial unit. Again, use variances are pretty hard and they require a lot of work. So I could split it up if the board wanted to do that.
No, you just talked me out of it. I'm not going to push for that. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The interpretation is, the interpretation fee is $325. You can see it ranges. Port Chester is again the most expensive at $3,000. The average, everywhere else is interpretations, are either, $810 or $910. And that's mostly because Port Chester is so ridiculously high that it skews the results. I'd recommend it that we
What
go
does
up.
that mean? I mean interpretation.
So when you want to do something, right, when you want to get something built, you got to go to the building department, and then the building department will interpret the code and say, hey, you need an area variance, you need a zoning variance, you need, this. And so if you disagree with what the building inspector's interpretation of the zoning code was, then you can go to the zoning board of appeals for relief from that decision, essentially. And interpretations, I think that, in my analysis, we had like 2 or 3 over the last 3 years. I think if it was 3, 2 of them were withdrawn, and then one of them was like, none of them ever moved forward, right? So they're just not very common. And we have somebody that might be applying for another one, but again, they just aren't that common. And it's hard to give a real good number on how much time and effort is involved in putting these interpretations together. Not as much as like a use variance, for sure. And so the other ZBA, for ZBA, there are other types of variances which are technically considered area variances, but are functionally not necessarily, there's sign code variances, there are parking variances that aren't part of larger applications. So, we just have it listed as other. There is an existing other. I recommended that it go up to 300. So it's a small increase, but it seemed to make sense to have something that, was a little cheaper than like an area variance, if you have a sign code variance, you don't want to kind of beat up a business owner who's trying to put up a sign.
Okay.
Next one is site plan. So again, our site plan numbers are pretty low compared to pretty much everybody. So, I did think that we could increase them. The average for a site plan for smaller properties is, $1,487. That's like basically almost $1,500 for a site plan analysis. So what I did was I increased slightly the site plan cost, which again takes a lot of time, right? It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time. So I raised the cost of site plan approval for projects that are less than 5,000 square feet to 500, and I kind of just went up incrementally to 250. And once it got past a certain site, 20,000, which is like a half-acre site, that's a commercial property, generally speaking, it goes up. It actually goes down a little bit. So the current price is $3,025. That was in part because of the reciprocity. So it went from 3,000 to 3,025. I took the 25 off and recommended to just go back down because I felt like it is what it is and that's the price. And I didn't want to raise that as well. I didn't feel comfortable recommending it. I could, if of course the board would like me to raise that, I could propose a raise fee there as well. But I thought it made more sense to just sort of kind of slightly increase it where I could. The conditional use permit, again, it just it's going up $25 to go up to $350. There's one thing that I would mention, like, the fee. I don't know the last time the fees were raised that much. So the fee of $350 is not that expensive. I think one of the challenges for property owners is that there are too many things that are conditional use permits that probably should just be as of right. And that's just a general comment. So, if people are complaining about why do I have to pay this fee, I think in many cases, our code requires a lot of stuff to be conditional use that, maybe it doesn't make sense. And I don't want to get too deep into that topic because I think that's something that requires a lot more thoughtful analysis. But if there was one way that we could find to sort of alleviate, costs for the taxpayer, it would be in limiting the use of conditional use permits.
And other communities seem to not even have a conditional use permit fee.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of thoughtful discussion I think that could go into that, and we could fall off track here, and I don't want to take it over. You're correct, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So subdivision, same thing. The cost that we charge for subdivisions is really pretty low. So I did look to bring that up a little bit, and I tried to be as reasonable with the subdivision and the lot line adjustments, and make sure that at the top line it wasn't super expensive, and at the bottom line it wasn't super cheap. And it was, but none of those numbers are ridiculous. So if you look at some of the prices, like Yorktown Heights charges, it's much higher. Portchester is much higher. Briarcliff Manor is much higher. Our fees are, even as proposed, significantly lower. The average for like 6+ lots is almost $6,000 everywhere else. I'm only proposing $1,000. I'm open to the idea of charging significantly more. There are projects like, like the project. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. I don't know why. We talk about it all the time. It's the one that we've talked about. It's a recent project. I don't know why. Birchbrook Manor. Yeah. Birchbrook Manor has required a lot of work. And it's a subdivision, it's like a 6-unit or 8-unit subdivision that if we had charged more, we could have certainly, that would have justified the amount of time and effort that went into it. We don't charge that much. So again, I'm not proposing major changes there, but I'm certainly open.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it seems like these other communities, they're discouraging subdivisions by having these very high fees, or acknowledging that there's a tremendous amount of work that goes along with it. And it seems like generally I like being on the low end, but I also don't want to be, essentially, like you said, using the example that you did, that was a labor intensive application that the taxpayers are paying you and Jamie and everybody else to put a lot of time and effort into, and not recouping much of that burden, which is really what these are supposed to do. So if you want to, if it's more appropriate to raise, I don't know how often this comes up. I don't know if that's like sort of an outlier and that was like the worst case scenario for the amount of time, but
I would keep in mind that, they do have to put in an escrow. There's a lot of payment that goes into paying for the salary, not the salaries, but the charges that we get from Keller Sessions or, McCullough Goldberg and Stout. They are paying for that as well. So even though we may not be recouping the fees for staff time, we are not paying for consultant times for larger projects. And that was my thinking in keeping that number low.
Okay.
But again, I'm open to whatever.
And what we don't know is necessarily is that standard practice that all these other communities are doing similar things with escrow and with outside consultants that are being paid in other.
It's standard, yeah. It's standard.
Right.
Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't Stuart? I thought we discussed this about paying for staff time, and there was an hourly rate. And is that coming up in the comp plan, or is that?
No, that's in the language. I think that's in the text of the thing that was just passed, actually.
Right.
So so there's some relief there as well.
All right.
And that's which is what escrow can be used for.
Right. That came out of the escrow, and if they got low, they had to re-up the escrow.
Okay.
So the next one is architectural review. And architectural review is the thing that I think affects like the homeowner, the 1 and 2 family home more than anything else. And so I felt like this was an opportunity to bring down the cost of an application. So currently our application is for 1 to 5 units, it's $225. And I felt like, there should be a fee change here where if you're a 1 and 2 family homeowner, you should only have to pay $150. I brought that fee down. That's the kind of thing that I think the average person will feel. If you have more than 2 units, if you're 3 units and above, you're basically commercial. And so I've increased the fee there. Not really. I mean, it's going from 525 to 500, but it was at the 6 unit threshold. So essentially, it's more expensive now if you have 3 units or 4 units than it would have been before. It's a little bit lower if it's 6 units and above. But the big change, the big shift is for those 1 and 2 family homeowners who previously were paying $225 are now only gonna have to pay $150. That is the biggest, I think, shift downward of any of the fees. And I did that because I've heard a lot about concerns about fees being too much for the 1 and 2 family homeowners. So I'm certainly open to just leaving it as it is. It's really a decision of the board, but that is why I made that change there.
I like that you've brought that down. It seems like, do other communities not have a fee for architectural review?
They may not have an ARB at all. So
The town does.
I'm
No, maybe
not
they don't.
sure
Maybe they
why
don't.
the town is not filled out there.
Because we seem to be,
that a couple of years ago.
I'm sorry?
The town didn't have an architectural review board for years, so it's only more recently that they do.
It just seems like we are like $500 for any size seems to be an outlier. It doesn't seem to be there's no correlation to other communities. I mean, I love all this review, but I just, that does sort of stand out.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I mean, I would not disagree with you.
Is there a lot of work for it? Is there a large burden for us to do the architectural review of these commercial properties? Is that why it seems appropriate? Because the fees are supposed to reflect the demand.
The BAR and the planning board are a combined board, and I would say that the current makeup of the board probably emphasizes the planning board responsibilities over the ARB responsibilities, just due to the nature of their expertise. So, it's not really a great answer, but I would say no, I don't know. It's hard to say. There are certain instances where there's a lot more work involved in the BAR stuff than in other instances. But, I think that finding some way to get some relief for the 1 and 2 family homeowners is helpful. And considering I've not heard like a lot of complaints from commercial property owners in BAR applications for the fee. Our fees combined are pretty low everywhere. So, if they say, oh, our BAR is a little high, every other fee is very low. So, if I was going to Portchester, I'd be like, what is going on here? So in that sense, we're better. The only other fee is the fee that exists for the like a zoning change, a map change, and that is a fee that exists with the Board of Trustees and not with the Planning Department. So I have listed it as the same. That is not my fee though. So it wouldn't go in my schedule. It would go in yours.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I've been weighing in all along. I don't know if anybody else has. Manny, what do you have to say about all this? Keeping in mind that we still have other meetings after this, so
Manny, I'll have you know there was a little Manny on my shoulder the whole time I was putting this together. I'm like, will Manny crucify me for this, or will he say good job? And I'm hoping that you find these acceptable.
The only one, thanks, Jaime, and I'm sure there was a lot of work done on your department. And I'm gonna say maybe three things on this. One, I'm not looking like I made a statement last week when we were going over some of the other fees in other departments. I'm not looking to raise any fees at this point because of what has been happening in our country and our world right now. So as much as I would love to say, let's go back to $150 for the architectural review, because I like that number. I'm gonna say I would prefer if we stay the numbers where we are. This is a couple of reasons why I'm saying this, because as you know, if you guys did this analysis for other municipalities, even though they do the mailing, some of them do not require it to be certified. Some of them don't require to do any mailing. Some of them, they just literally give you a sign and you post that out in your property. So there's a lot of things that in 2018 changed, where the planning department start mailing things out, making the homeowner mailing, or the applicant, I should say, to mail that information. So it's not, to me, it's not just the $25, but it also has been the problem that I always had is the homeowner now has to pay for the mailing. And you and I and some other members on the staff have talked about, definitely architectural review board and planning, and other municipalities, they don't even have that for residential. And we've been talking about, how do we accomplish that here in Austin in regards to something very similar to North Castle. And we talked about this before, and that hasn't come in front of us yet. That's not a conversation that we had. There's a couple other items in there that I don't think I'll be in favor of making the changes until we actually have accomplished the other items. We raised these fees last year because we said we're going to start doing all this online system. We are doing online, not the way we were imagined that we were going to be doing online. So that may not happen until probably a year and a half from now. So we're not in an online system where all that stuff is ready to go. So to me, it's not fair for the applicant to pay some additional stuff. I'm not saying next year when things are looking a little bit different and we can pass a signage law that we've been working on it for over a year, where we looked at the planning and architectural review board for single families and two families. Not until we solve a lot of the language issues that we have in our code. Me personally, I will not be in favor of making any changes of these fees. So that's where I stand right now. And,
okay,
and it will be the majority of the board who makes the decision. But
right, but let me ask you. So I know that this is something just on principle that you had said when we first started having budget discussions last week. But I know that just because of your day job and because of your many years of paying so much attention to what's happening in planning and building and Ossining, I know you have a lot to say and you have a lot of institutional knowledge that can help us to be thoughtful in this regard. If we were going to change the fees and update them, most of them going up a little bit, some, at least one or two of them going down a little bit, does this seem to you like a well thought out, logical plan? Or are there any that jump out at you that you think, too much, not enough, approach it differently? If we weren't going on your principle of no fee changes.
I think this is something helpful as a starting point for me. There's a lot of stuff that municipalities do that we don't. In other municipalities, they don't do what we do, obviously. So I think comparing, I don't want to just compare the fees, because the services that other municipalities do for the applicant are different, and they're accommodating the reasons why those fees may be too high. I don't know if that makes sense. So I don't want to compare to Portchester. Let's say if we're going to compare to Portchester or Peekskill for this matter, in an architectural review board setting, when I'm going in front of the planning board, what is the planning department in Portchester provide? What are the services that provide that's the reason why those fees are so high? So I want to make sure that, are we comparing apples to apples? So even though you guys did this comparison, but you guys did the comparison to the fees, not to the services that the other municipalities provide along with the fees. So is that something that, again, I know there's other items and I don't want to take too much time on this. To me, right now, we can change fees at any time. Sure, you know, the fees can change in the middle of the year if that's what we want as a village board. We have that power. So right now, unless you have me tell me, yes, that's exactly what we did, and these are the services that all municipalities do, and this is the services that we provide, and we provide 100% more services than other municipalities do, and that's the reason why I'm saying, you know, I'm putting this as a proposal to increase the fees. Then I'll say, you know what, then let's do it. But I don't think that's the case, and I don't think right now it's fair to an applicant, and especially to a homeowner, for us to increase any numbers, because as we all know, labor has, you know, in construction, and Bob, you can help me out on this, labor kind of has stayed the same. The material cost of something, or whatever that is that they're trying to do, has increased. And in some of the cases, the lead time into finding a material is very hard for a homeowner to accomplish. So, you know, I don't want to hit the homeowner at every single direction with additional fees.
So maybe
$25.
maybe we can thread the needle a little bit and look at the fees, hold steady on the fees for the 1 and 2 family. Like the area variance for 1 and 2 family is currently at 300. It's proposed to go up to 350. Maybe we hold that. I mean, I understand, like, I think Jaime was looking at this as wanting to, you know, maintain the balance between the 1 and 2 family and the commercial, but I hear what you're saying. But while many households have experienced financial hardship this year with a loss of jobs or a loss of income, if there's a commercial developer that is not everybody, some people are actually doing very well in this economy and taking advantage of opportunities in this economy, and those are people who are more likely to be able to invest in commercial properties. So maybe we bring up to, we follow the recommendations, particularly for the commercial properties, but if there are properties where, if there are instances where we're talking about the individual homeowner, maybe we hold theirs steady. And so that would be with the area variance or the site plan or the subdivision, which I don't know how often that happens. Or, you know, or the architecture review. Architecture review is actually going down, so that's it.
And I will agree with that, Victoria. But the problem that I'm holding off and agreeing with that 100% is because we did pass this escrow law that allow us to go back. You know, we talked about this not too long ago, like a few minutes ago, where now we have the ability for us to charge the time that our planner, our lawyer, our engineer, our building inspector can charge back to that applicant that we did not have, you know, last year or the years before. So we have that ability. So to me, it's not fair that said, oh yeah, we're going to do this, but we also, you know, pass a law that is going to have the ability for us to charge, you know, to create an escrow account to facilitate and to help us pay for the time and services that we are providing as well. So I think I will have to look at this as in a bigger picture, and this is not there for me yet. So
I did want to just note one thing. I just checked with Jamie, but we do not require certified mail. We require regular mail with a notarized affidavit of mailing.
The part I understand that. The part that we were looking into when we were looking into the signage, the notifications, part of the problem that we were getting, at least the complaints that I had, and even the complaints that other people have, is like, I never got my mail. So to me, was never, you know, one of the things that we looked into, and I'm not going to get into the details, but one of the things that we're looking at when we're looking to change or add a signage to this whole thing, it was certified mail. So maybe that's why, you know, if I misspoke, and then.
Yeah, I mean, we don't charge certified mail, which is very expensive.
Okay. All right.
So we don't do the mail. We don't do the mailing for people either. But,
no, you don't. But you used to. 2017 and below that year, the planning department used to. 2018 changed.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to start charging people more for the certified for certified mail. I'm actually really looking forward to being able to pass the laws to have the lawn signs. I think that's a far more effective way of communicating to people who are most directly impacted in the neighborhood by changes to the property. I do want to just be mindful of the time. We've gone over an hour now with planning, and we have 25 minutes left budgeted for building, and that's kind of giving Joe the short shrift. So are there final questions or comments for or by Jaime before we move on to Joe?
Homer has his hand raised.
Thank you. The comment that I want to make is I appreciate Manny's thoughtfulness about not wanting to raise fees as a way of being responsive to the general economic troubles that folks in our community may be facing. My feeling about it is wanting to ask the question, what is the purpose behind fees in general? We know that the point is not a profit. We're not a profit-driven institution. And so it's not to maximize profit. The point, as I understand it, is to try to offset some of the staff costs and some of the costs that we inquire as a village in order to do these kinds of things. And there's a secondary reason of either incentivizing or disincentivizing certain behavior, so that the more fees you charge for something, the less likely someone is to want to do it if they have the option. If you're a commercial developer, if the fees are lower here, maybe you will build something here. That's maybe part of your calculus compared to somewhere else. And that's where I think the comparisons to other municipalities is most useful. All that being said, I think one of the challenges that, to use a somewhat unrelated example, the county, for folks that were county legislators, they hadn't increased their salary in a very, very long time. And then they did this big salary increase to try to make it equitable. And there was a lot of community comment about that, about like, why are their salaries going up 30%, 40%, or whatever it is, when ours are not going up that much, whatever it is. And to me, similarly, if we were to raise the fees to stay in line with inflation and everything else, $25, for example, like these relatively small costs for if you're converting a 2-family home to a 3-family home, $25 isn't going to make the difference between you doing that project or not. But what it is doing is allowing us to raise fees incrementally enough that it doesn't disincentivize the behavior we want, while also keeping in line with inflation, to the point where we don't then 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, when we go, okay, it makes sense. Look at how much farther behind we are from all the other communities. We're not being competitive, and we're actually like losing money on all of these things. And then you have to raise them so much that it becomes an issue more than it would be in this case. It may differ from line by line to what extent that argument is valid, but as a whole, no one wants to be the one raising fees. That's not a fun position to be in. But if it makes sense to stay consistent with what our values are, then that makes sense to me.
Thanks, Omar. That was very well stated. And with that very thoughtful exchange between my colleagues, I think we should probably say thank you to Jaime and move on to
Thank you.
building. Is that okay with you, Karen? Is there anything that you wanted to cover before we transition?
No, thank you very much, Jaime. It's a good 7 months. You put in a lot of effort here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jaime.
Well, thanks to Jamie for all that hard work she put into it. So
Yes, Jamie
Thank
too.
you, Jamie Kane.
Thank you, Jamie Kane.
right. And I'll be in the EAC meeting, so I'll see you later.
Thank you, Jaime.
Next up is Joe Augustinelli.
Hey, Joe.
How's everyone doing?
Good. Good to see you.
Good evening, Joe.
How are you? I think ours, and just generalizing, is not really too much change from last year. Some of the things we kind of we reduced in a couple of factors. We had lost this year one person who no longer is working with us, has there's an office assistant. So we're not putting that job line back in the budget. We're gonna continue working with just with the 3 office assistant staff that we have. And we're doing that interchanging with the planning department, where if any of the secretarial staff, where they require some help, they'll be working to help out planning, and vice versa. When Jamie Kane has some availability and extra time, she'll be helping out planning, helping out building. So we don't have a need to put back, add a person in that capacity going forward. I did keep the assistant building inspector's position there, just in case. Last year we, based on all the what's gone on this past year, we didn't fill that position, but we want to keep that line there just going forward, where we talked about having an assistant building inspector who can, if we hire somebody, including say on Saturdays, we'd have an individual here who can also offer to the public another day for doing building inspections, and also be here if there's any issues, complaints, violations that someone needs to go out to observe. An assistant building inspector can handle both of those aspects, both building and code enforcement. But other than that, the salaries and the staff we have hasn't changed, which you can see, I guess, here on the first couple of pages.
That's correct. And then you have a small amount in for laptop, monitor, and there was one other item I thought.
Yeah, so since we decided, we're going forward where we don't have people doing applications where they're coming in with all this paper to the counter and everything is gone digital. Architects are submitting their plans digitally. So, when we're doing reviews on them, it's a little tough to review them on on a small screen. So we put in to obviously get some larger screens so that building inspector, assistant building inspector is able to use those screens to basically be able to see the plans accurately and do the proper reviews. Also, where we have tablets currently, which I believe which will work. The only thing is we're getting a laptop, so when the assistant building inspector goes out on the field, he's able to open up the plans and be able to view them instead of carrying all these plans with him on a job site. So it's really just kind of preparing for what we're going to be doing going forward, where we're not going to be doing stuff with actual papers, but rather everything just entered straight into a laptop or a tablet, and we're receiving all applications that way. Once we buy them and we purchase these things, then we have them going forward. If we find another supplier for another person who is going to, another company that we can have with our online submissions, we'll have all the, laptops and computers that we need to go forward with that.
Great. 36,400 is where you budget for the arborist. So we have $4,500 in there.
Right.
Telephone and internet.
Right, that's all just regular continuing expenses that we pay just for the office staff. The printing and postage, why that's up is because, we still have, it's all code enforcement, because code enforcement is sending out violations and intent to inspect. We sent out notices to do fire inspections, requests. So as, where we're told right now legally is all of that has to be sent out and it has to be registered now. Until hopefully maybe the state will change the parameters of how violations are issued, where maybe they'll start to, come up with new ways that are acceptable legally to allow us to, what's considered proper service if it's not necessarily registered mail. But all what you're seeing in that increased cost is just the number of fire inspection notices and violations through code enforcement. So there's a slight increase in there to kind of balance off what we spent in the past year.
Yeah, I mean, it's you've increased it slightly, but actually you've been over 7,000 for the last few years, and you're probably going to go over it this year. Is that seems like yours maybe needs to even be a little bit higher, unless you really think that there's a chance that you're going to, I mean, we're talking about like a couple $100 or whatever, so you don't necessarily have to do a big budget update, but you know, thanks for explaining why it's so high, and if it makes sense to be 7,500 or something, then I would make it 7,500 in your case.
Right, and
And we certainly don't ever want you to not send out notifications of violations, please. Please, any violations that need to be addressed, we are 100% behind whatever certification of mail you need to send it out to get those in line. I know you're doing everything you can.
right, and actually this past year, that number where you saw it kind of decreased a little bit was also obviously due to the COVID-19, because for about 3 months of time, you know, the state had where construction and contractors had to be put on hold. You know, there was a little bit of being able to go out and do proper fire inspections based on the concerns with the virus. So it's obviously going forward not going to be that way. It's gonna probably be more what you're seeing over the last number of years, where it's like 8,000.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually amazing that it's as high as it is, considering you really were restricted in what you could do for a good amount of time this spring. I would think, yeah, I mean, reminding us of that, I think you probably, well, it seems, I don't care if you make it 7,500 or 8,000, but it seems like you're going to end up spending that anyway. That's what it looks like.
Yeah. You know, once we were able to kind of go back to a, you know, when everything loosened up a little bit in May, that's when we went straight out and started doing what we try to catch up on what we were not able to do for the last couple of months. So I anticipate that's probably going to be somewhere around 7,500 or so for this coming year. Office supplies, I think we're pretty much staying on the same. There's a little increase on constables. I've actually talked to Stuart about this to try to see what's happening. As you see, the constable service cost is going up year after year. This year, it's gone up a lot because a lot of concerns. Some of these service agencies have increased their pricing because the people that work for them have to go door to door to people and actually serve in person. Again, based on the COVID-19 situation, they raised their fees because I guess their concerns are, you know, they have a bigger risk where they're sending their employees out door to door to people to service paper in person. So there's been a little bit of increase. I've talked to Stuart about a plan going forward to see if there's other ways to be able to service in another fashion, another way that wouldn't at the cost, you know, to offset some of this cost, whether it's, you know, we're servicing them directly ourselves, or maybe they don't have to be done through a constable service. But as of now, we put in for $8,000 just to basically cover, so we're not short going forward for this year. Professional dues and meetings. Some of that money this year, by the way, is going to be returned to us because when there's education, that all the code enforcement staff and building inspectors have to keep up their certification yearly. So we used to all have to go for 24 hours a year at the Westchester County Center, which there was a cost to you know, send some of the training. But that all was held up this year, and the state actually did all their training through webinars online, and there was no cost to anybody who was working for a municipality in the capacity of a code enforcement officer or a building inspector. So the money that was paid at the beginning of the year was going to be reimbursed to us because they did not have any of those education classes. But you know, it actually worked out well that they do webinars, to be honest with you, to get your certification. And they would, you know, then maybe going forward, if they continue to do that, maybe the state will put a cost to that. But this year there was no cost to anybody. You just had to sign up, and it was free for training. But again, we put in that money there because I'm not sure what the state is going to do this coming year.
Right. Great. When you know the status of the return on that, just let me know and I can build out an AR for that, Joe.
Yes, we're working on that currently, so we should have something. We were told that there was going to be returned to us shortly, so I will work with that and have Lori contact you over that.
Great. So here is your unleaded line. Do you want to talk about your cars?
Well, obviously that's going to go down because we have 2 vehicles now that are electric. So we won't be using obviously as much fuel with that. So now that they've been able to straighten out the charging situation on them, because they were a little bit of a problem for us, but that's been corrected. And the code enforcement officers are using them on a daily basis, and they seem to be working just as we had planned. They seem to be working fine. I mean, it's vehicles to use locally. So, but you know, some of that money that you see already is this past year is lower than usual.
Mm-hmm.
So I anticipate this coming year it's going to go down again.
What were your charging problems? I'm just curious for my own edification.
I just think they had to get used to, you know, what was the proper charging for it, because they put in these chargers, and when you plugged in and charged the vehicles, they were charging, but very slowly. Like you were getting 3% charge per hour. So you would, you know, literally have to leave the car. If you went down to 20%, you'd have to leave the car on for like a day and a half to charge. But they realized that they had to change the I guess the power. They were using like a 110 line, which is like plugging it into a regular outlet, and they increased it to a 220 line so they can get the vehicles.
Well, I thought when I was out there that I had that conversation, that it has to be 220. I mean, you have to wait like 8 hours to whatever. Okay, so
yeah, but we've got that corrected, so they think they're going. You know, they're working very well. So that's going to cut down some of that fuel cost. We'll see this year when we use them for a full year how much savings it'll be, but it's going to definitely be savings.
Zero fuel would be.
Yeah.
Not some.
Also,
no oil changes. There's no engine, so there's no oil changers. There's no any of that stuff.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, the maintenance on them should be just, you know, maintenance, regular maintenance within our garage.
Nothing.
Things like that. That's it. And actually, as we get into, I mean, I have a vehicle that's going to go in to the budget in the next coming years to come, and that's actually to eliminate one of the vehicles that we have now. That's a 2007. So, let's say, I mean, I put it in as, you know, something could change in 2023. Maybe, you know, if the board is interested in removing some of the vehicles to get on electric quicker, we'd be able to do that quicker. But right now we have 4 vehicles, 2 are electric, and the next one that we put on there would get us down to having 3 out of the 4 being electric. You know, but the only vehicle that would still be on, I guess, now is you know, we have a vehicle that was purchased like in 2016, so that's fairly new, but it's a 4-cylinder vehicle. It doesn't use as much gas as the other ones that were these big SUVs, but you know, we're working towards having all the vehicles become electric in the next coming years.
You guys get the greenest fleet award in the village right now. You're moving ahead, and we're trying to get others to fall in line. So thank you for leading the way for village.
Well, I'm glad to be the example of positivity going forward.
Are you? I'm sorry, Joe. Are you done with your budgets?
Pretty much. I mean, everything is pretty much the same. I mean, you'll see the only other thing that we added to it was we added for that's all for the overgrowth. So we added where we're going to be, you know, when we come into the spring season again, even going forward, if it may be in the winter when property owners get a notice from us, you know, you have overgrowth, people are complaining about the weeds. You have 10 days to take care of this. Otherwise, the village is going to send their own contracted individual or company to go out and take care of this. And then we send a bill to the owner for the services. If they don't pay the bill within 21 days, then it goes on their taxes and the village recuperates the money. But we wanted to increase some of that because of you know, a lot of these properties, that people don't maintain them. It's just something that just looks like an eyesore for the whole summer. And if it's something that we have to do on our own to maintain, you know, the look of the village, so it doesn't look so unsightly, we would just take care of them quickly and recuperate the money, whether they just, you know, pay the bill or it just goes on their taxes and we'll get it at tax time.
Yeah, that was actually a really, that was a big improvement, what, just in the last year or so that we took that approach, right?
Yeah.
A more proactive approach. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you for that.
Yeah,
So
it's
we increased
very,
them.
very helpful.
Yeah, we increased some on that just to make sure we're covered because, you know, it's hard to really make a determination of the cost. I mean, a landscaper goes out there and looks at it, depends on the size of the property, how much overgrowth, how much work they have. We're going to be, I know with Karen and Maddie, we're going to put out and have, you know, a company that will put out the information and anybody can come in and do a bid, and then whoever becomes the landscaping third party company to take care of this for us will be the individual who's going to go forward getting the job for the next coming year and who's going to get that work. So we'll be prepared, we'll even be better prepared this coming year.
Okay.
Hey,
Yep.
Joe, just a quick question. You mentioned about the iPads and the inspectors being out in the field and using the iPads to pull up the drawings. What platform would you be using on that? And is there a fee for that platform?
No, we actually do a log meeting that Craig has set up with them. So it's basically when they get on and they log in, it'll be like they're working right off their desktop.
Okay.
So we just set that up as a service. There is a mobile service. I know that we do pay with Municity to use their actual mobile service to it, but we tried that. I think we're trying now to do a login. So you kind of go on your desktop. The thing that it does work with the tablets for the code enforcement is the idea is, you know, you can put in your results right there. You can take the pictures of what you're seeing and it's all loaded and it's in the system instead of doing this on paper, then going back and sitting at a desk to do all this work. You know, and then if you have a violation or even for the assistant building inspector doing an inspection, the contractor gives us his email and we just email them the past inspection. There's no, you don't even have to, you know, give them we don't have to buy duplicate paper and give them a copy of the sheet. We just email them the results.
Okay. No, sounds good. I was just curious. That's all.
And I think the mobile service, if we do it with Municity, is cheap. But, you know, if we're going to be going with another online service looking going forward, we'll discuss if there's any cost to that or if it's included in the total cost for the program.
Sounds good.
So, Joe, first of all, I don't see you as much as I used to, like everybody else. So nice to see you again.
Same here.
I've learned so much about so much of what you do over the past few years. So thanks for that. I have a couple of sort of macro questions, not line by line kind of items. The weekends. So a lot of stuff happens on the weekends. Now, arguably, now that the weather is getting colder and stuff, probably less, but soon enough it'll be spring, and this is an annual discussion. So what can we do on the board to help you monitor activities better on the weekend? I heard you started with on the budget you have, you budgeted for somebody for the weekend, but we still haven't moved forward, I don't think, with that, unless I misunderstood what you said.
Right, we do have in the budget for a position for that, and obviously if we do go, if we do fill that position, we're going to be canvassing a person to let them know that Saturdays will be included as part of their week. So we'd want somebody to come in and say work Tuesday to Saturday, and you're off Sunday and Monday. So that would cover us to have an individual, you know, who would be here working on Saturday during the day who can handle some of that. Sundays is another different discussion, I know, because there's some union contracts and things they have to work through with that. But I do think if we could be, have somebody at least be in the office 6 days a week would be a benefit. other than that, right now, basically, I monitor the weekends if there's activity.
No, I know that, but I don't think that's sustainable, to be honest with you, Joe. And I have a question. So how long has that rec been opened?
Which is that? I'm sorry.
How long have we had that rec open? Is this a definite, or is it just that you guys are waiting for approval for the weekend person? It's not really a weekend person. It's a person whose a schedule will include one weekend day, I should say.
So this was a position we had open last year, and we did not hire mainly because people weren't even coming in the office, let alone being available. We were hampered by COVID. So I think though, Maddie, do we have an issue with canvassing for this based on?
We don't have an issue with canvassing, but there is a personnel issue that the board would be familiar with that we do have to work out with the county in order to ensure that we can go ahead and canvass for that position.
Right.
Okay, so is this a matter of personnel that we're not going to be all now?
Yeah, we can't discuss it right now, but we are working on it. It's a long.
Okay.
All right,
That's fine.
I just say something real quick? And obviously we can have this in a different discussion another time, but just remember, when we were going through the contract with the CSCA, one of the questions that I was very specific in asking this, it was a weekend person, not a Saturday and Sunday, but more like Tuesday through Saturday. And there was no issue. There should not be an issue of having a code enforcement right now working on a Saturday, because we dealt with this before. We had a code enforcement that worked on a Saturday before. So to me, having one of the three code enforcements or one of the two code enforcement that we have right now work a different schedule than on Monday through Friday should not be an issue. Now, I do agree that having an assistant building inspector working on a Saturday is definitely going to help the department, yes. But because we do not have that just yet, I don't see the reason why we don't have a code enforcement run. And we went through this before. This is not the first time we're talking about this.
Yeah.
So to me, is not acceptable to talk about, yeah, we're going to hire, when we hire another person, that's when we can do this.
Trustee
That's
Casada,
not what it is.
there are some other issues I would prefer to discuss in personnel.
They want to discuss it under a personnel
there's
session.
just
Let's do that. Let's not forget that this is a hot button and has history to it.
Yeah.
While I have you, Joe. Joe, please share with me your top 3 things that we could do to help you. First of all, I think you work a tremendous amount of hours. And in those hours, you do a lot of work. And code enforcement during COVID, I think, is really challenging. But more challenging will be when a lot of the codes are lifted. And, this is a budget plan not going retroactively. This is a budget plan going forward. So let's assume things will, I would not say go back to normal. On the contrary, I would say would be very different, but we can't just all sit here and say, well, we can't predict the future, et cetera, et cetera. So Joe, I'm trying to get you to tell me, how can we help you? Code enforcement, weekends, whatever your big issues are. This is a time to really for the board to hear from you and say, Rika, if I could get help with fill in the blank, that would be great, that maybe we didn't think about, that maybe, and I'm not saying you didn't discuss it with Karen, I'm not saying any of that. I'm just opening up a conversation. Like, what do you need from us to do your job?
Obviously, like we said, we'll discuss about trying to get a person here to be on Saturdays, because that would be very
Right,
helpful.
we got that.
But
We're going to discuss that.
Yes, I think that one of the issues is, and I brought it up, we've spoken about this in the past, Karen and with Stuart. I think a lot of the issues with code enforcement is the whole procedure takes a long time because, I believe the courts have a lot of things going on. I understand that they have people who are, other things that are maybe more to deal with, people who commit felons and things like that. And, the building department is looking to get people to do some proper housing. And I think a lot of times when it gets in front of the court, the judge is more trying to be a mediator to give people time to correct things and so forth. And I thought that there was ways that a lot of these things can be handled administratively, whether it's through like, the village has a person that can hire, an arbitrator that these are violations, they're not crimes. So maybe, instead of them being tied up in a court, the law is written where if the prosecution says this is what we have as evidence of what happened, and the defendant can say such and such, and then an arbitrator just basically rules, yes, code enforcement did their job properly, and you're responsible to handle this and take care of it, and you've got this much time, and maybe there's an administrative fee charge for the penalty of what they've done, rather than it going to court and a judge trying to levy a violation fine. It should be more handled administratively. When we actually put in the administrative fee, like people doing work without permits, where their permit fee now is administratively cost of $1,000, the people are come in, they have to pay for that. They've learned, the contractor learned his lesson. It's much more valuable for you to come in and take your permit or ask what permits need, because rather than paying $200, you've now been incurring $1,000. We didn't need the court system to put that charge in place, and it's been very effective. So I think that looking into doing things like that, we talked about, like, we've had sanitation tickets rather than issuing sanitation tickets, because sanitation and DPW are going to go and pick up the garbage anyway because they don't want it unsightly.
Right.
Rather than doing that, maybe DPW charges the property owner a fee for them having to make an extra collection. So like we're doing with the overgrowth, rather than bringing these type of tickets to court, we're just telling you, you've got 10 days to correct this. If you don't, we're going to send our own person, you're going to pay that fee. So, and maybe there's a way where the Department of Public Works says, rather than us giving a ticket to collect $100 in front of a judge, you charge that $100 to them for the service of picking it up. In my town, if you need an extra bulk pickup, you pay for it. They give you so many, and then after that, if you leave garbage out, you get charged a fee. And I think that's much more effective because it takes a lot of this out of the courts. The courts have a lot of cases as it is. So, bringing in cases of overgrowth, of sanitation and so forth only just adds to the calendar. So I think there's other methods and other ways that we can accomplish the same thing without having to overbear the courts.
So we've been talking about that, the idea of a we've been talking about
thank Joe. I was going to just thank Joe for his input and a couple of those headlines that may improve things. I just wanted to just thank him. Thanks, Joe.
Joe, we've been talking about the potential for a sanitation fee for, I don't know, I think we started talking about it last year that I was aware of. And is that something that we need to take legislative action on?
Yeah, I would say that it's something that we'd have to put into our village code. And it obviously would have to be just put in as you get charged an administrative fee for somebody. So we made that chapter 225, which is for sanitation, but maybe that needs to be altered where it's not saying that the enforcement is that you get written a ticket and you go in front of a judge, but rather you incur some administrative fee that's charged by the village.
Great, thanks.
So I guess the answer is, Mayor, is that yes, we do have to do some modification to the way the code and the enforcement is, and maybe we do it Stuart obviously has to be involved in this a lot because he'll know the legal parameters of it. But I think that's kind of the way we should go on a lot of things, and I think we get a lot more compliance faster and quickly than having to drag it out in front of the court system, because
yeah, absolutely. And those are things that we're going to want to address anyway. And I think all of your points are very well taken. The last thing we want to do is put more things in the courts if that's really not the best use of the court system. It's really not helping us address the challenges that we're going to be addressing that are so important. I do want to just be mindful of the time because we've hit the 7 o'clock mark. And building fees was something we were going to talk about at a previous work session, and we put it off. I do just want to say we do have a work session tomorrow with a pretty light agenda, so not that necessarily Joe was planning to join us, but it is something to be aware of. If we needed to add something from tonight to tomorrow's work session, it's a possibility. Karen, I'm looking at you.
Building fees, we're not making any changes, so I'm not sure that we need to discuss.
Oh, great. No,
And I
that's
think
easy.
also Joe is scheduled to be at another meeting tomorrow night, which is why we haven't added it back up.
So that's a non-issue then anyway. But didn't we have proposed building fees on a work session 2 weeks ago, and then we delayed it?
Yeah, we don't have any increase of fees. To be honest with you, similarly, because we kept in the same way that Javi did with the municipalities. I had done a similar spreadsheet with using the same municipalities. Every building department kind of has you can't really compare apples to apples because everybody charges their fees differently. You know, where we may say, you know, your electrical permit fee is $75 for up to $1,000 of cost. Somebody else says, you know, $125 for $5,000 of cost. So in the end, I realized that our fees are very similar to a lot of other municipalities. I don't think that we charge a lot and we don't undercharge. So I didn't propose really to do any increase at all this year.
Okay.
And the only thing we really did that changed on the fee schedule, some of the things that were on there that we don't charge fees for permits, like, you know, maintaining your roof, putting up a fire escape, which the state doesn't even permit anymore. We just removed them out of the fee schedule because they're not things we request permits for anyway, so they shouldn't be on that schedule. But the things that do get fees for permit fees, we didn't increase any.
Okay, great.
I didn't think it was the proper time to do it anyway because of this past year, what's happened. So if it's something that's to be discussed going forward in years to come, then we'll discuss that again.
Had we been incrementally increasing your fees in recent years? I can't keep track of which ones we've been raising. We've been trying to raise some fees each year so that there's not a big leap after sort of ignoring them all for a long period of time, which had happened in the past.
Well, last year we increased the fees because we thought we were going to be with Semprocity, but we didn't. Even though we're not using Semprocity, we're kind of still offering the same service to the public, where the difference is instead of they're uploading stuff, they're giving it to us and we're doing that for them. But it's still where they're able to email it and do it from their homes rather than coming in to the counter at our office. So we just didn't decrease the fees. It's still the same $15 and $25. So in essence, that increased cost is to cover some of the additional staff costs of doing the work of basically uploading their application into our computers. So we did kind of make an increase last year, but it was based on on a different reason. But we didn't decrease it either. We just left it the same.
All right. Well, it seems like it worked out because now we're not going to increase it from last year, but we have actually incrementally increased it, and it works out. And you're making Manny happy because you're not asking us to increase any fees for your department. So, Manny, you can't complain about the fees.
No, I cannot complain. Joe, you're not giving me anything to complain today right now.
Well, one of the things we did do, just as the last thing to tell you is, some of the money that was put into the budget as well, that I know we didn't go over every single line, is I'm also making sure that all the code enforcement and inspectors who are out on the field are wearing as much uniform stuff, where they're wearing Village of Boston and building department shirts and so forth. Because I think it's a good idea to have that out there so they're aware that, these people are employees of the village. They should have some sort of identification of the fact that they are out here doing code enforcement or doing fire inspections and they are part of the building department. So we spent a little bit of money just getting them proper, jackets and shirts and so forth for the summer and the winter so that they are identifiable.
Great. Thank you.
Just made my day, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I do have a question. So there's nothing on the capitals from you. You mentioned vehicles before, but I don't see anything on the capitals on the building department, unless it's on a different line.
We just put it in for the 5-year on the capital for 5 years. We just put in one vehicle, but it's on there as 2023, but
nothing for this year.
No, not for this year. You know, I know that Rika would like to get us on electric vehicles quicker.
No, only when it's time. It doesn't do anything if you do it sooner than it needs to be, although one could argue differently, but it's fine. It's 23 makes a lot of sense. My goal is to get everybody on electric in the entire village, but I can't say anything to you because you're already beating me to the punchline, Joe.
So I
Thank
put
you.
it for 2023, kind of estimating time. You know, maybe we look at it again and maybe 2022.
Great.
That's it.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, everybody, have a good night. I know you guys still have a long night to go, so.